Hello world, my name is Amelia and welcome back to another one of my videos. So in this video I decided, since it seems like a lot of people really like my educational videos on the process of being transgender, what does it mean, the kind of things that we encounter and deal with, I would just real quickly go over the methods of transitioning. Something that very commonly, the kind of things that a trans person has to face when they decide to begin the journey. This information I believe will be very beneficial to people out there who are questioning their gender and are considering the process, as well as those who are just kind of curious how this works. So anyways, what I want to go over in this video, I'm going to talk about how I started my journey, as well as do a little bit of show and tell. So I do want to make the disclaimer that this video is purely for educational purposes. I do not provide any of the information I am about to share for the purpose of you to go out there and DIY it yourself, because that can be incredibly dangerous without the assistance of a doctor, prescribing a doctor, as well as I am, for those who are squeamish, which I feel like I'm saying that word incorrect, I am going to be showing some of my supplies, and I am personally on injections now. However, I will warn you in the video when I'm about to show any of the things that might be a problem. So we will hold off on that until later. So where I'm going to start is talk about where I began. So I am 15 months down the road. I've been doing this for 15 months now. And there are two very common ways to start the process. The most common way that's pretty common in the United States is the traditional WPATH method of therapy. Usually you go in for some sort of counseling or therapy, and then the therapist writes you a letter of recommendation, which you then take to a prescribing doctor to get your hormones and your blockers, which, by the way, I am obviously, like with the voice feminization, I'm also going to be talking from the process of how this works for a trans woman, a male to female transgender person. But the process can be very similar for a female to male, but I might miss some information or get some information incorrect. So that's just something that's important to know. So, for me personally, I started down what is known as the informed consent route. What that basically means is I first went to the prescribing doctor. I did not see a therapist beforehand, even though I did do some over-the-phone counseling with a therapist. And that therapist I had talked with at the time had said they very well could see that transitioning would have been beneficial to me. So I went to the doctor, and then basically the doctor does their own little bit of evaluation, and then usually they put a form in front of you that has a bunch of disclaimers and understandings and risk and benefits. I'm going to real quickly, I have my informed consent letter up here on the screen. I'm going to real quickly just kind of go over it. I'm not going to read it like I did with my letters in my one last video. So basically the letter starts out by giving you a risk overview. Literally the first line is, "Oh, so you want to take estrogen to feminize your body." Oh my gosh, that was annoying. So one of the things it says is, warning, these are the people who should not take estrogen, people who have estrogen dependent cancer, or people who have a high risk of blood clots, which is very important to understand. There is also things such as you having a strong history of breast cancer, diabetes, eye problems, heart problems, hepatitis, high cholesterol, blah, 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 is obese, smoking. The next part talks about what is it going to do. It talks about, I understand that these things will not happen very quickly, yada yada. I am trying to go through this very quickly. I understand that I may develop breasts and that the breasts may be prolonged even after starting progesterone or estrogen. There's certain things that you just have to understand, like understanding that you may not fully grow back your hair. That was something that I was afraid of when I started, but fortunately for me, I grew back most of it. I still have some really bad balding in certain spots, but that's something that can be taken care of through other. I understand that I very likely will become infertile, which is very common for a trans person. After 6 months, you are then infertile, unable of pregnation, which very likely has happened to me. I understand I may have an erectile dysfunction develop. I may have less of a sex drive, yada yada. I understand that some things are not irreversible, such as cannot be irreversed, such as beard hair, mustache, voice feminization, or Adam Apple will not shrink, which for me, I was actually very lucky not to have one in the first place. So there's a little bit of one hidden there, but it's not very prominent. Then it just goes over what are the risks of it, and it just, so like I basically understand I do not smoke, I'm not overweight, I am not over the age of 40, etc., etc., etc. So that basically is the letter. You just basically are signing a paper that says, I understand the risks, the benefits, etc. I am, like I said, I'm 15 months into this process. I've experienced some things that were very well expected. I really honestly can't say there was a whole lot that I didn't expect to happen. Other than maybe like I did have some, breast discharge, which apparently is very common to happen in the first few months of transitioning. But like things like my sex drive lowering, it was all stuff I was expecting. So I don't want to dwell on all that stuff because there's way more to cover in this process. So then usually after you do that, there are going to be the medications that your prescribing doctor will give you. Very commonly, the doctor is going to pair you with an estradiol, which is your estrogen, which gives you the hormones you need for your cross-sex hormone transitioning, and they will pair it with a blocker. So in the case of a male to female, you're going to get your estradiol, and you're going to get your testosterone blocker. A female to male is going to get an estrogen blocker while getting prescribed a testosterone, which now I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but I've heard it's very common for female to males, for trans men, to only be able to do injections for testosterone. Fortunately, that is one thing that somebody like me can benefit from, is that there are multiple ways of getting our estrogen. I don't really know the reasons why, but I digress. So very commonly, the most common method, let me go over real quick the blockers. Now, there is a lot of different blockers out there. I'm not necessarily going to be able to name them all. I'm only going to ever be able to name the one that I was on. I was on a blocker known as spirolactone. I don't take this blocker anymore because after about a year of transitioning, I safely got to the point that I was able to achieving what's called monotherapy, which means that my hormonal feedback system, my estradiol levels were consistently high enough that it shut down. It prevented my pituitary gland from producing FSH and LH hormone, which is the hormone that triggers my testicles to produce testosterone. So I've had 2 blood tests done over the last 6 months, and they both had me well under the female testosterone levels, and that's just strictly on monotherapy alone. One thing that's interesting about spirolactone is it does not block the production of testosterone, it blocks it at the receptor. So if you get a blood test done while you're on spirolactone, you're going to see you're basically going to see the real testosterone levels, even though that may not necessarily be what's being received at the receptor. There are some blockers out there that block things, like there was a very common one for a while that blocks DHT, which is a concentrated version of testosterone, but it did nothing for a trans person. Usually it might do something for the hair, but then there was people who they would transition and look really good and do really good, and then all of a sudden, boom, all their hair starts falling out again. I'm not really sure what the reasons were for that, but I can tell you that that wasn't too fun to read about. But yes, spirolactone is very common, and I personally just know that it was very nice to be able to get off it and be able to just strictly go to estradiol. Now, the other thing that you're going to be, so very commonly, when your doctor puts you on estradiol, it's going to be pills. Most trans women I have ever met are on pill estradiol. It is a daily pill you have to take. So I have an empty box right here. There's a little manual in here. This is a Bayer makes this product. It's Praganova. This is a 1 milligram pill. And and you just you basically just pop it daily. It passes through the liver safely, and the liver converts it into estradiol. Now, there is some interesting stuff you get for people. You can read about that. Like, apparently there's a problem of estradiol being converted into estrone. I just know personally, biogenetics are very fascinating, and I would love to just talk about everything I have learned. But that's the point of having a doctor who can help you. And here I go burping again. And having a doctor that can oversee your process and knows what they're doing. Which, by the way, can actually be a very hard thing to do as a trans person. Have a doctor who knows what they are doing. It is common in the community to believe that an endo can understand it, but really, honestly, I find personally that OBGYNs almost understand the process. My doctor personally is an OBGYN. She's amazing. She looks at my hormone levels and she's just like, yeah, that looks good. That looks good. Like, she understands progesterone well. And I think that's just because she deals with a lot of cis women. So she understands these things. So that is a very common way. The second most common way that you'll usually find is patches. Commonly the pills will come in 1 milligram, 2 milligram, 4 milligram, or 6 milligram. Usually you don't want to see, you personally, a doctor who knows what they're doing is not going to put a trans woman on any more than 6 milligrams. If you're having low levels, that's usually something else. But anyways, the second form is patches. Usually the patches are a 100 milligram or 100 milligram, and usually you leave them on for 2, 3, 4 days. Most people will place them up here or they'll place them back here. Some of them work better in the shower, while some of them don't work so great. I've heard a lot of mixed results about patches. I've heard some pros and cons about it. Like, it was something I was considering for a while, but it just got to the point where it was just like, not sure about that one. There are some pros to it. Another very common form is injections, which I will touch on that more in a bit here, just because that's my way of doing it. But after that, then comes things like there is I can't think of the word. It's more common in Australia and New Zealand. You won't find it in England or America very often, very commonly, even though it can be done. It's just the cost doesn't really balance out with the benefits. And that's where they actually make an incision and they put a concentrated tablet under the skin, and then that's it. You're good for anywhere from 1 to 3 months. It just slowly absorbs into the system. It's just like a little, I can't remember the name of it, but that is also a very common way of doing it. They're a little more budget friendly in some countries. Here in the United States, it's about $300 or $400 to get the procedure done. They just basically cut, slide it in there, stitch it up, and you're good for a little while. That one I definitely know is more preferred for nice balanced levels of estrogen, because it slowly absorbs at the same rate. But it just, again, the cost did not really make sense cost effectively. Pills are usually the first cheapest form, and then injections coming second. Okay, and then after that is usually creams. Creams are usually also prescribed as a additional topical treatment on top of HRT. And more commonly than not, I see them applied to the scrotum, but they're, again, kind of a mixed review. Some people I hear have good success on it, some people don't. So, for me personally, I am on the injection form. So I'm going to go ahead and warn people who are watching this video. Warning, I have show and tell here. So if you're squeamish about needles, I would highly recommend you either click off the video now or fast forward to this timestamp I will put right here at the bottom of the video. So the first thing that I am going to show is this is a vial. So this is what I buy at my pharmacy. It comes in this is a 10. What I am taking is a 100 milligram 5 milliliter, which is a 20 milligram per milliliter bottle. I have to take this weekly. I inject it every Wednesday. So tomorrow is actually my next due injection. Very commonly, that will be, here we go, will be paired. This is what you're going to use for the injection. It is a syringe with a needle on the end here. These are just disposable. You will usually, once you are done doing your injections, you would dispose of them in a Sharps container. I will demonstrate a little better how this works and how I do mine. Again, like I said, there's about 10 injections worth in one of these little bottles. This bottle costs me from, I have a pharmacy I go to. This stuff can cost, for somebody without insurance, can be about $120, which is one reason why not a whole lot of people do injections, is either they're squeamish with needles or they don't really like the price tag. Personally, I go to my one pharmacy, which gets federal funding, and it costs me $15 per bottle. Or with my insurance I currently get through my work, it's only $10 per bottle. This is usually, this is a brand new packaging right here. I haven't opened this one yet. And this is, as you can see, this is a full bottle. Let me see if you can see the, ow, where's my hair getting stuck? Can't really see the liquid in there. Come on, because the camera will not adjust to it. But anyways, that is a full bottle. I have not done yet, so I'm going to go ahead and show usually how I do this. Now, I did start out on these disposable needles, but after a while I wanted to go to something that was a little more budget friendly, so I had actually gone online. This one is actually broken. I had actually gone online and I had actually bought these reusable syringes. Some people would actually say that this is not exactly a safe way to do it, but personally I've been doing it this way for a while now, as long as I'm very careful to make sure that they don't open up and they stay sanitary. I clean them down. Very commonly the way that you're going to do it is you're going to use alcohol sterile pads. These right here, you're going to probably notice these as being a little bit like the alcohol pads you would use after barbecues. So they're just little squares like this, and I usually like to use this just to make sure everything stays sterile. And then this right here, it has a removable sterile cap, which you remove out like that. And then the way you would start this is you would take the bottle of estradiol and you basically pop this little cap off the end. As you can see, we got this here, and then you basically clean it with the rag, and then usually use, in my case, I use an 18 gauge needle, which I have right here, and we put that on the end of you, and then we stick it inside of the vial like this, and we draw in the amount. Now what I take is, I personally use a 0.5 milliliter. So I take this little syringe right here and I pull it back to the 0.5 millimeter mark, and I try to get as little air bubbles, as few air bubbles inside of the thing as possible. I will do that, then I will switch over the needle to, there are usually commonly, you'll be using either a 22 or a 23 gauge needle. I personally just end up switching over. I've been using a 25. Usually, so like this one right here comes with a 23 and it's an inch long. I personally have been using a 25 and it's an 1.5 inches. Now this is known as intermuscular injections, which I do right here on my thigh leg. Now you can also do like a 1/2 inch, and sometimes you can do it up here in the deltoid muscle. That is not a very common way of doing it, but it is an alternative for some people nonetheless. So anyways, once you're ready to go, you have the needle all ready to go on the syringe, you're pulled back, you take this right here, you would clean the area like this so that it's nice and sterile. You can also use soap and water, and then you just stick the needle into the muscle. It's pretty simple. Any of you out there who are going to be going through the process and you decide you're going to be brave enough to try the needle, you can usually get a nurse to actually teach you. There's plenty of videos all online. I'm sure there's even plenty of videos here on YouTube that can help demonstrate how it works. But that is how it works for me. I have been doing that weekly for the past 15 months. It is definitely something that for me at least, has not gotten easier. I do know that it's potential for it to get easier, and I'm still working up to that process. So anyways, that is basically how it works. Commonly, the clinical endpoint for somebody taking hormones is 3 to 5 years. For me personally, like I said, 15 months, and this is what I look like so far. And people who have seen old photos, you would know what I mean. Anyways, I want to leave this video here. We've been going 20 minutes now. I've been trying to do this. Don't forget to follow me on my social media, as this is very important to me. It helps me understand to feel like there are people watching out there who actually care about my videos, and subscribing is even more important. It helps build up that following, because I really would like to eventually make some sort of pay for the work that I put in and the time I put into this, because there are so many other things I really need to be doing in life, but I understand that I want to be documenting this journey for other people who need to know. Anyways, I will talk to you all later. Bye now.